Van Gogh buried a code in every brushstroke. One art dealer spent a century selling without ever cracking it. The man who died broke, left behind a visual code so dense with occult geometry, esoteric color theory, and deliberate symbolism that dealers spent decades selling it without ever decoding it. What they missed reveals who Van Gogh was actually painting for, and it wasn't a buyer. Because here's the problem. Most people look at a Van Gogh and see weather. They see wind in the wheat, heat in the sunflowers, a sky that seems to breathe. That's the surface. That's what the museum gift shop reprints. And the reprint is exactly what the 20th century art market wanted you to see. Because a mystic is harder to sell than a tortured genius. Look closer at the Starry Night. The swirls above the village aren't decorative. They map, with unnerving accuracy, the turbulent flow patterns that fluid dynamicists would only formally describe decades later. Astronomers have identified the moon, Venus, and a cluster resembling the constellation Aries in the position it actually held over Saint-Rémy in June 1889. Van Gogh was painting from a barred asylum window before dawn. He wasn't inventing a sky, he was recording one. Now here's where it agitates. If Van Gogh was that precise about the heavens, what else is he being precise about that you've never been told to look for? Take his signature. He signed Vincent, just the first name, not Van Gogh. And he only signed the paintings he considered finished, the ones he believed carried meaning. The unsigned ones, he treated as studies, incomplete transmissions. Museums hang them side by side and never mention the distinction. Then there's the color pairing. Van Gogh wrote obsessively about complementary color in his letters to his brother Theo, hundreds of them publicly archived. Red against green, blue against orange, yellow against violet. He described these pairings as spiritual forces, borrowing language from Eugène Delacroix and from color theorists like Charles Blanc, whose writings on the mystical properties of hue Van Gogh studied with the intensity of a theology student. That word, theology, matters. Before he ever picked up a brush professionally, Van Gogh trained as a preacher. He worked among Belgian coal miners. He gave away his possessions. The religious framework never left him. It just changed vocabulary. Look at the sower. Look at how often that figure appears across his catalog. The sower isn't a peasant. It's a parable. Matthew 13, the seed on stony ground. The wheat fields aren't landscapes, they're eschatology. The crows above the final field aren't foreshadowing his death because a biographer said so. They're a symbol he'd used for years, tied to harvest, judgment, and the end of things. And the sunflowers, arranged in groups of specific numbers, painted in series, gifted to Paul Gauguin as a coded welcome. Yellow, in Van Gogh's private lexicon from his letters, meant friendship, gratitude, and divine presence all at once. So here's the resolution. Van Gogh wasn't a madman flinging paint. He was a former preacher encoding scripture, astronomy, and color as spirit into canvases he expected almost no one to buy. He painted for a viewer who hadn't arrived yet, possibly for no earthly viewer at all. The dealers who priced him didn't decode him. The crowds filing past in Amsterdam and New York mostly don't either. So the answer to who he was painting for is the same answer he signed into every finished canvas. The one word, first name only, that a preacher uses when he's addressing God directly. Vincent, not the artist, the supplicant. If you got something out of this, hit subscribe. This channel goes deeper on the corners of art history most videos skip. And tell me in the comments, what's the part of this you can't stop thinking about? Next on this channel, another story like this one. The kind most people never hear. Stay for that one.